Hello and welcome back everyone, Nicholas from Bicycle here, and in today's video we're diving deep into the world of mountain bike suspension setup. In particular, we'll be focusing on a fundamental aspect called sag. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned rider, understanding sag and getting it dialed in can drastically improve your mountain biking experience. So without further ado, let's get started. Sag refers to how much the suspension compresses under the rider's weight when they're sitting on the bike. It's essential to set up sag properly because it affects how your suspension performs and responds to terrain in terms of comfort, stability, traction, etc. If there is too much sag, you risk bottoming out, and too little sag, the suspension will feel firm and harsh. So we want to find the sweet spot. It is typically expressed as a percentage of your total suspension travel. Most manufacturers will have their recommendations for sag. However, if you cannot find them, for a good base, we commonly aim for around 20% sag for the front fork and 30% sag for the rear shock. This range can vary depending on your riding style, terrain, and personal preference. To set up sag accurately, you'll need a few things beforehand. First of all, you'll need a shock pump used to adjust the air pressure in your suspension, any kind of measuring tool used to measure the amount of sag, a notepad and pen for recording your settings and adjustments, a friend or something to lean on. You'll need to be wearing all the gear you would typically wear when riding. You'll need to make sure the rear and front suspension is fully open and not in lockout mode. And you'll need to check the stroke length of your rear shock and the total travel of your fork. This will either be printed on the suspension or refer to the manufacturer's manual. On Fox and RockShox suspension, there are ID codes you can use to find the details on your suspension. In this case, we have 130 millimeters of suspension travel in the fork and a stroke length of 55 millimeters. Now, starting at the front, most suspensions will have recommended air pressures and sag based on your weight printed on the backside or online. You could simply use your pump and add or decrease air pressure to achieve this, and you should be good to go. However, for the sake of this video, we will assume you did not find these and adjust the sag to 20%. To do this, go ahead and get on your bike while your friend holds the bike. Release the brakes, bounce on it a few times to free up the suspension and equalize the air chambers. Get into your normal attacking position and then allow the suspension to settle for about 10 seconds. Then have your friend move the O-ring found on the shock stanchion down to the rubber seal. If you do not have an O-ring, you can also use a zip tie. If you are doing this alone, try not to move as much when you are moving the O-ring. Now slowly and carefully get off the bike and measure the distance in millimeters between the O-ring and the seal. This represents your sag. Take the sag measurement and divide it by the total suspension travel and multiply by 100. This will give your sag in percentage. If it's 20%, you're good to go. If not, go ahead and screw the shock pump on and add or decrease air pressure by 10 psi at a time accordingly. To increase sag, you'll need to decrease air pressure, and to decrease sag, you'll need to add pressure. Repeat the process until you have achieved the desired sag percentage, and make sure to note down the PSI. Also, don't be frightened if you notice different PSI readings each time you adjust. Some air pressure is lost when removing and screwing on the shock pump. Now let's move on to setting up the sag for the rear shock. Again, consult your bike manufacturer's recommendations. However, if you cannot find any, follow the same steps for the front fork, but instead of standing on the bike, you will now be sitting down. So mount the bike, bounce on it a couple times, slowly sit down, let the suspension settle, set the O-ring, and then carefully dismount. Again, measure the sag from the O-ring to the seal, and this time calculate the percentage by dividing the sag measurement by the stroke length and multiply by 100. Adjust the air pressure accordingly until you achieve the desired sag percentage of 30%. You'll probably have to do this several times until you achieve the desired sag percentage. Congratulations, you've successfully learned how to set up sag on your mountain bike suspension. Keep in mind, personal preference plays a role here, and you might need to experiment to find your sweet spot. If you prefer a more responsive and firm ride, reduce the sag slightly. If you want a plusher ride that absorbs small bumps better, increase the sag slightly. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, peace.